The advice and opinions expressed by Dr. Grant Pichet and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice.
Dr. Doreen Grant Pichet is the
Dr. Doreen is an expert in autism.
Doreen Grant Pichet.
Dr. Grant Pichet.
Dr. Doreen Grant Pichet.
Dr. Doreen Grant Pichet is a visionary in the field of autism. Now you can ask her questions on Ask Dr. Doreen. Good morning and welcome to Ask Dr. Doreen. We're back. I'm Shannon Penrod and I'm here with the fabulous and wonderful, I'm Carol Merriling it wrong, Dr. Doreen Grant Pichet, who's joining us from location undisclosed. Good morning, Dr. Grant Pichet.
Good morning, Shannon. Good morning, everyone. It's been a while.
It has been a while. We are back though, you guys. Today is September, what is it, the 4th? It's
Third.
The 3rd, 4th? It's the day after Labor Day, and we're back, and I can tell you it's the day after Labor Day because all of us here in Los Angeles had the hardest time getting to the studio this morning. It was cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs because everybody's back to school, everybody's back at work, but we are here because Dr. Grant Pichet is here, and we're going to have an amazing Ask Dr. Doreen. Our topic today is how to master and maintain skills. We have a bunch of questions that have already been written in, but want to tell you that we love our favorite thing. I don't want to speak for you, Dr. Grant Pichet, but I'm going to guess it's your favorite thing too, is when we get to talk to people live.
Yeah, absolutely. We do love that.
It is the most fun thing. So you guys can do that. We're live right now on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and about a dozen other sites. Our fabulous Chris Desmond is showing you on the screen right now all the different ways that you can interact with us. Don't forget that if you are listening to us in podcast, and it's likely then you would be listening after the fact, you can always still write into us as well. You can write in on AskDrDoreen.com. That's a great way to write in, or you can write to me, Shannon, at autism-live.com. And we really enjoy hearing from you guys, whatever it is that you, a lot of times we base our topics for future shows based on what you guys have written in. And we do have a couple of questions today about our topic. Oh, good morning to Susie and good morning to Anna. We're so thrilled that you're watching us live. We're back live. It's been a while, but we're thrilled to be back. Also want to let you know, give you the brief disclaimer here. Dr. Doreen Grant Pichet is a true expert in the field of autism. She's been working in this field for more than 40, I'm saying 40 years, which is absolutely mind-blowing to me because she doesn't even look like she is 40. But be that as it may, she is a brilliant expert in this field, working with people of all ages and abilities, from very small babies up through senior citizens. There is no one, and I've met a lot of people, there is no one who is better at taking the perspective of and advocating for individuals on the spectrum and for their rights, and for them to be able to fight for what's important to them. So I just so appreciate getting the time to spend with her answering your questions. However, there is no expert in this field or any other field that could give individual specific advice in this format. It would be a disservice to the individual on the spectrum. So we hope that you'll write in, be as specific as possible about what it is that you want to ask Dr. Grant Pichet. Let us know where in the world you reside so that she can maybe have an idea of what resources are available to you. And then she will give you sometimes questions to take back to the experts who have eyes on the situation, and other times she lets us know information that we should know about that topic, which is just brilliant and life-changing for so many of us. Thank you, Dr. Grant Pichet. All right. So that's my spiel, and our topic, as I said before, how to master and maintain skills. And we have had somebody who wrote in over a month ago and has been waiting patiently for their question to be answered. So they said, "Hi, love the show. Thank you both for all that you do. My son recently turned 3. We decided to forego special ed preschool for my son and focus on home-based ABA program. We still aren't getting 40 hours, and maintenance takes a long time as it's so repetitive and limits how many new topics are introduced. Can you talk a bit about maintenance? Also, my son still naps 2 to 3 hours in the middle of the day He definitely needs it. This cuts a lot of ABA time. Should I force him to give it up? And again, she said he just turned 3.
Great, great. Really good question. Again, yeah, before I start getting into the questions, Shannon, I just want to kind of apologize to all of our viewers because we took a long time off, and that was just because I was gone and then you were gone, and our timing was not correlated this summer. But it's really nice to be back, and we're looking forward to letting all of our viewers know that we are back, and happy to answer all questions live. So yeah, so this is a 3-year-old, and I'm trying to understand what is happening that is being considered maintenance. So usually when we learn through ABA, we do, one-to-one various techniques and protocols. And then when the child masters any single thing, it goes into generalization, which basically means that we try to make sure that thing that they mastered is being used in their day-to-day lives. And then like once a month or once every couple of months, depending on the child, you come back and check to make sure that the child hasn't lost that concept. It doesn't really often happen that you lose a lot of concepts. It's just that sometimes we're learning things so rapidly that we just want to make sure our kids don't get confused. That's maintenance. So maintenance itself shouldn't really be taking time. I'm thinking maybe you're referring to generalization, and generalization is really important. And it is a little bit more loosely structured than structured ABAs. But it is very important, but it shouldn't be delaying things significantly. If it is, you kind of need to go back and do more of the actual ABA, structured ABA, because generalization is, I'll just give you an example. It's like you learn a concept like, asking your therapist how they're doing, and you just, then the team will want to make sure that the child is applying that same concept to various other kids, maybe teacher, parent, whatever, other people in their lives. So whatever they learn, whenever you learn something, we generalize across people, across settings. Those are the two main. Of course, there's other generalization factors like different times of the day, etc. But we want to make sure that what the child learns with their therapist, they're doing with other people and in different settings. So that's the answer to that. It should not be taking a tremendous amount of time. The nap is, if your child has just turned 3 and they're taking a 2 to 3 hour nap, that's a little bit too much. And I wouldn't just cut the nap, I would start reducing it. Because basically, after 3, kids, doesn't matter what they're doing, don't generally need to nap. And by the way, if you do reduce it, it'll maybe help your child's sleep overnight. So I would gradually start reducing it so that when your child is closer to, let's say, 3.5 or 3.8, so on, they don't need a nap anymore. So, or maybe even closer to 4. You can always keep a nap if you really feel like it's important to your child, but 2 to 3 hours is really long. So maybe drop it down to an hour maximum. So, and that should give you a little bit more time as well. It is important though to get your hours up. 3 is the critical period, age 3. So it's important to be really using your hours well.
Absolutely. We're saying good morning to Autism Journey with Elijah. Good morning to you. We're so glad that you're here watching us live. That's wonderful. Okay. The next question that we have, and remember you guys, you can be writing in questions right now, but I do have some questions written in from before. Hi, doctor. I have a question. My son is 6, and he has very good language, but he's not able to answer on factual info. For example, when my sister asked him, "Did you go to school?" and he's not able to say, "I'm in summer holidays." how do I teach it? Or his favorite food, what his father's car is. These questions he's not able to answer. Even if I tell him the answer and ask that later, he is not answering them.
Okay. Let me just write this down because there's lots of parts to this.
Okay.
Okay, so here we go. So it's really important to, I think when your kids are learning English and they're learning, to speak, consider it as if they're learning another language. That'll kind of help you a little bit in terms of like figuring out what they should and shouldn't be able to do. Because our kids are learning a little bit differently than typical development. And so it gives you the understanding that when you learn certain things, it doesn't mean that you're going to be able to answer other things, just like another foreign language. So now if your child was learning a lot of vocabulary, let's say, and even learning specific sentences, that doesn't mean that if you change the form of the sentence, your child will be able to necessarily pick up right away. That's the same if you're learning a foreign language. Now, that said, you do want to make sure there's a lot of generalization happening. So let's say good ABA, when you're learning, let's say, a new concept, let's say the color blue, you want to make sure that, depends on where the child is. If the child is in the beginning of a program, just starting to learn things, then we're only teaching it really in terms of like, let's say a receptive type of lesson. Like we will have the child match blue to blue, or we'll ask something like, touch the blue truck. And the child responds by touching a blue object or just the color blue. And we know that the child is starting to understand that blue is different than, let's say, red or orange or whatever. So that's just one way of teaching blue, right? But if I now come back to the same child, and I can say that he has mastered the receptive identification of blue, I can't come back and say, what color is the sky? And expect the child now to say it's blue, right? Because he's only mastered it in a receptive format, right? He's not really yet learned that the color blue, the answer, like, first of all, he's not even learned it in an expressive format where I could show him an object and say, what color is it? And he could say blue. And he definitely hasn't mastered it in the form of an interverbal, which is an object that's not even physically present. So we have to learn things in different ways before we can use them in different ways. Now, why doesn't that apply to typical development? Well, because typical development actually occurs over time, right? We learn things and we use them, and our age is increasing. And as our age increases, we have different opportunities to use those things differently. Whereas, let's say, a 1-year-old or a 2-year-old at home might be just asking for a blue object. By the time they're 3 and 4, they know that blue is used in multiple different settings and different ways and so on. And that's just because they're not learning in a very compressed period of time. We're learning over a long period of time. But with kids who have not learned a lot of language or been able to pay attention to it in their first few years, now they're like 4 years, 5 years old, and we're compressing all this information together and trying to teach them through very, very intensive means. So it takes a little while for the child to be able to just categorize things correctly so that they can pull out that information correctly. So don't worry about the fact that he's not able to respond to sentences that were not taught before. He will be able to do that as time progresses. Now, you said something else, though, that I want to address as well, because you said something about even if I tell him the answer and ask him later. And that, I'm not sure if that's not being able to give the answer because he doesn't understand the instruction or the question, or because you used the word later. I don't know if that's a memory issue. So it would be important to make sure that it's not that he's not retaining information. In fact, there are lots of kind of neuropsych tests and IQ tests and all this that actually test memory. Memory plays a very, very, very important role in how our kids learn new material and how they integrate it, the new material with old material, right? So like, again, going back to the example of blue, if I now teach the child what color is your dad's car or whatever it might be, and the child is able to say blue, we want to make sure that he doesn't think, oh, the answer blue now only relates to dad's car. It doesn't have anything to do with the block or the truck that I was asking for. We want to make sure he realizes, oh, blue can apply to both scenarios. That's called working memory, being able to take in new information and integrate it into what you already knew as opposed to replace it. So that is a different issue, and kind of just want to make sure that it's not a memory thing that's going on. But I wouldn't be discouraged. As long as your child is learning new material, I would increase just as much of that as possible, increase the time that he's learning. I don't want to go off on a tangent, but he is 6, and there's so many demands on kids when they turn 6, 7, 8. It's like now academics and all these other things enter their world, and we lose valuable time to teach our kids these important skills like language and social behavior. So if your child's learning and benefiting from ABA or any other speech therapy or anything else that he's doing, increase that, because before you know it, by age 8, you'll be dealing with so many other things like academic issues that he has to learn that it'll take away from this time for language.
One of the things I so appreciate about you and about the type of ABA that you talk about is that so often as parents, we see our child is not getting this skill that we've seen all of our nieces and nephews and other people's children just get. And so it feels like it might be outside of our grasp for us. And I love that you're like, we're just going to teach it this way, and you demystify it for us, which is absolutely such a gift. I hope you feel that on a daily basis, what a gift you are to all of us.
Thanks, Shannon. I appreciate that. Thank you. It means a lot to me. But I just want people to realize that, there was a reason that the child didn't learn language in the beginning, right? And we're trying, so it is like learning a second language or a third, it's a whole different process, and we have to be patient.
Absolutely. Susie has written in and wants you to know that she said, hello, I would just like to say that the Monterey Park office is amazing. My son loves attending every day. We all love his team, and his BCBA is fantastic. We love hearing that, Susie. Thanks so much for sharing that. An Autism Journey with Elijah says, you are definitely a blessing. I know we're in agreement about that. Another question that we had that was sent in, my son was talking at 18 months, but by 2.5 years, most of his language was gone. We have just started ABA, and he is once again learning language, but how do I know he won't lose it again? This is my fear.
Yeah, a lot of parents who have had a child regress have that same fear. And I can tell you that it's over. It's not going to happen again. Like I rarely have the opportunity to be that definitive about something, but I want to tell you that that period of time between 18 and 24 months is a very common period of regression for kids. And it's generally the belief that we have about that is that it is due to a lot of different kind of overload of toxicity that occurs at that period due to a variety of things that we all do between 18 to 24 months. But, not only are we talking about toxicity in our food, there's like so much stuff that happens at that early age. If your child has started to kind of recoup some of his skills and develop language after that, unless you have a very, very severe illness that impacts his immune system drastically, I wouldn't worry. You don't have regressive autism happening, past 3, 4, and so on. It just doesn't happen. It's really an earlier type thing that happens. Don't worry and celebrate everything that he's learning and just keep prodding forward.
Well, and in fact, our first question was about, somebody who was saying that maintenance is taking up so much time, which you were saying it really shouldn't. But the whole reason for every once in a while, once a month, maintaining skills is to make sure that we aren't losing anything, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's true. And there's a big difference between the type of skill loss that occurs from a lack of generalization and regressive autism.
Yeah.
Like, let's talk about that for a minute, because I don't want parents to be confused. So if you teach a skill, I mean, this is for me as well. Like every summer when I go to the summers where I'm in Europe, for instance, I realize that my French and my German skills have deteriorated because I don't use them. I don't use those languages, right? And so that is the kind of thing that occurs when we don't generalize something well. I always tell parents that make sure that language becomes useful to the child when they learn it, because if they use it, they're not going to lose it. Now, regressive autism is very different. That occurs typically with kids where they were developing completely typically, and then something occurred during that period of time which overloaded the child, and then the child literally lost skills that they were using and had mastered completely, and were just typical development goes backwards. Very, very difficult thing to see. I've had a lot of parents come and kind of tell me about that, and it does produce trauma, obviously, for the parent, because you're seeing your child interacting, talking, etc., and then pretty rapidly they lose that. And that is not something that reoccurs later in life. So I just want to be very clear about that.
Thank you so much for that clarification. Another viewer wrote in and said, my daughter has been getting ABA for about 6 months. Sometimes they tell me, oh, she mastered this or she mastered that. They are so happy, but I do not see this. Maybe I don't understand mastered. Why is she not doing it at home? Is this mastered?
That's great. The perfect questions given the topic of generalization. So as I was saying before, a lot of, if I was to teach a child something, they would, if they have mastered it, they would be responding to me. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they would have the same exact behavior with Shannon, for example. So, and that is the process of generalization. When we teach something, we want to make sure we're getting the same result or the same response across different people and across different settings. So it is really important to teach a skill, let's say if you're learning it in a clinic setting, to teach it in the home setting, in the school setting, and to make sure that the child is responding the same with parents and other people in the child's life. Now, when assuming you have ABA and you have a team, and the way that they generalize to you is they teach you, and this is where the importance of caregiver collaboration and parent education and parent training comes in. Your team should be teaching you to do things, first of all, exactly the same way they're doing it, and then gradually helping you reduce that kind of structure of ABA and turn it into regular life events. I'll give you an example of that. So let's say you are trying to generalize the concept of the child asking for something they want to drink in a full sentence. So I want apple juice, right? And the therapists have now been very successful at teaching the child this in a sit-down scenario in the clinic, wherever they're working, or in school. But your child doesn't do that at home The reason they don't do that at home is that up to this point, they've received that object in other ways. Either you've predicted it and just given the child, or the child's taken you by your hand. They have a different form of communication at home. Now you have to teach the child that the same rules apply in the home. So if you want your apple juice, you have to come up to me, give me eye contact, and use a full sentence and say, I want apple juice. And then as you teach that, that means the way you teach that, by the way, is you do not reward the previous ways of the child communicating, let's say taking you by the hand, but you do reward them looking at you and asking you using language, full sentences, same as what they're doing with their therapist. And that's the only scenario under which you give them the apple juice. Under the other scenarios, you don't give them the apple juice, but you can prompt the child to ask, to use their language. Once the child has figured out, okay, I'm not going to get my apple juice if I point to, or if I take my mom there or my dad there, but I will get it when I ask for it verbally in a sentence, then they'll start doing that with you in the home. That's the process of generalization. You teach it across settings and across people. You don't have to do it across every single human being. Most of the time, our kids generalize naturally after the first like 4 or 5 additional people. And that's, by the way, that's part of the reason that we've always had teams of therapists, because we want to make sure that the child responds to different people the same.
I so appreciate you explaining this, because I recently I've just met a bunch of parents who are just starting, and there seems to be some misunderstanding around this, because there are some parents who are like, well, I just want one person on the team, and I don't know whether this is a leftover from COVID. They're like, why do we have to have so many people? Why? I just want one person. Can you just give me one good person, and then let's not have 35 people, you know, tramping in my house, or that I need to get used to. They're wanting to simplify. And then we have families that are on the other side of it that I think that understand a little bit more, and they're wanting to have maybe 10 people on the team. Right. And that I'm always trying to talk to people about, there's a middle ground in there that's really, really effective too. Maybe talk a little bit about, for you, obviously, sometimes we work with what we have, right? But in an ideal circumstance, how many people would you like to see on a team?
Yeah, and I don't think, Shannon, anyone's done actual research to kind of look at, you know, depending on the hours of the child, how many people are ideal. But I can definitely give some thoughts, because I've supervised hundreds of teams. So a lot of it has to do with how the child is progressing. Yeah. And if the child is able to go pretty fast, then honestly, the more people, the better. Because, of course, now the balancing act of that. So on the one hand, I want a lot of people, because a lot of people will have different styles, and the child will learn to deal with all different kinds of people, different styles, different levels of reward, different levels of prompting, different facial expressions, different everything, right? So that's very good. The only downside to having a huge team is consistency. And so that means that if the child is actually getting stuck, or there's a behavioral contrast effect where they're doing well with some people and not well with others, and you have 10 people on the team, you got to make sure all 10 are doing things exactly the same in order to increase the consistency so the child can learn more rapidly. So really it's about balancing the size with how well the child is doing. New material, when it's new information, I definitely don't want a huge team. I want a medium level team. If I'm doing, let's say, a 25-hour-a-week program, which is pretty common now, I would want 5 people maybe on the team, plus my BCBA. If I'm doing a 10-hour-a-week program, I want at least 2, maybe 3 people, depends on the people and the sessions. It really varies, right? So, and you just want to keep an eye on the fact that everybody on the team is, that the child is moving forward. That's the bottom line. If the child's not moving forward, you start to troubleshoot, right? And one of the areas of troubleshooting is is my team consistent? Are they all teaching things the same? And if it's not, then you can downsize the team and make sure that you do a lot of overlap so people do things the same.
Wonderful. So Autism Journey with Elijah wrote in and said, we have given my son about 2 to 3 months and documented his daily routine and his ups and downs. And we found a pattern. We decided to progressively take back on the dairy and carbs, and he has become a different child. He is more calm, and I want to tell you that when you gave us some advice, it worked. We are pleased and have a huge thank you. My son is very active and energetic, so this is a relief. He doesn't ask for milk, cheese, or carbs much anymore. And they sent a blue heart. So isn't that wonderful? And then Reza has written in and said, what do you think about ATEC as a tool for autism?
Oh, yeah, we'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, congratulations for Elijah's mom, because that is, as you know, Shannon, not easy to get rid of dairy and carbs. So that's really hard. But good job. I mean, I can tell you that it's funny, right before we got on the call, I was reading an article about how a lot of kids not on the spectrum improve significantly when they're on steroids, right? When they take steroids for one reason or another, and that is all inflammation, obviously. And I was trying to look up like other ways to reduce inflammation, because we know that our kids struggle with inflammation, which affects not only their GI tract, but also their brain. So, one of the things is changing the diet and making sure that you are eliminating things that are difficult for our kids to digest and break down. And you've done that. So that's fantastic. And congratulations. I hope that it does a lot of good on an ongoing basis. Amen. So I just wanted to touch that. The ATEC is it's a good test. It's a questionnaire, and it will help you look at how your child is progressing. I really always recommend that people pick a questionnaire that, there's lots of questionnaires out there, but a questionnaire that helps identify kind of the symptoms and the severity of the symptoms that your child is experiencing. Because anything you do, whether it's a medication or a diet or improved sleep or intensive ABA or speech or OT, anything you do, you want to be able to see improvement. And being able to do the ATEC now and do the ATEC after, let's say, 4 months or so, and see if there is improvement is really important. So I think that's the value of all of these tests.
Wonderful. Autism Journey with Elijah wrote back and said, oh, it was hard, but consistency is a huge thing. And they said, trust me, I wanted to give up because it didn't look like an end, but we did it, and we are so happy, so thank you so much.
That's awesome.
It is that perseverance thing that can be so hard. Also wanted to, we had a question about mastering things. My son's team is working on safety crossing the street. I love this, but I am just terrified. How will they know when he truly has it? I live in fear of the first time they let him cross the street by himself. Can you talk about mastery when it comes to safety goals?
Yeah, that's a hard one, right? And depending on how good the team is and how many resources, I guess, they have, you could definitely continue to kind of manufacture the setting so that it gives you some ease. So in other words, they could select a very empty area of town or a street that has very, very little activity going on. Pick a weekend morning when no one's traveling and have a couple of the therapists or people cousins, nephews, whatever, drive with their cars to see if your child has actually mastered look right, look left, look right again, and there are no cars, now I can go. So you can extend, I guess, the end of that scenario to the point where you really feel comfortable, or a little bit more comfortable, I'll say, But this is true. It is difficult with safety stuff. Like another area of safety, obviously, is strangers and knowing not to interact with or go with strangers. Another area is consumption of hazardous materials, like chemicals. And so when we teach those things, we will take the setting and expand it a little bit further. So we will actually make like fake chemicals that are harmless and put them like under the sink in a container that looks like it should not be had, and then we will observe to make sure that the child is not actually going to ingest those. As you know, Shannon, we have a pretty extensive stranger program to teach kids to identify who would be a stranger and what they can do actually if a stranger does come up to them. So yeah, these things are very important. I completely get it for parents. Let me tell you, all parents of neurotypical kids have this anxiety as well. Look at it in terms of, thank goodness that you have a team of people who are working on this. Because let me tell you, with all of our kids as they were growing up, we were all afraid, do they really know how to cross the street, right? So it's a gradual process, and if your team sets up the manufacturers and makes the scenario all the way until they have like cars that are safe because they're driven by people then you'll get a little bit more assurance.
Yeah, I always try to be careful about, there's a saying that my friends and I use about, not blowing rainbows up people's tuchuses, right? But I do think that sometimes if we stick around long enough, we see that there are some blessings in our lives and the way that our lives shaped up. I don't think any of us would have been like, oh, sign me up, I want to have a child with autism, and I'd like to be doing ABA therapy. I don't think that was on anybody's bingo card as a woohoo, I want that. But I want to tell you that I don't think it was last summer, I think it was 2 summers ago, they were having this show on during the summer, and it featured parents and parenting styles. And they would show, the kids would be put through a challenge, you would meet the family, each set of parents, and I think there were like 12 sets of parents, had this philosophy. Like there was the progressive parents and there were the strict parents and all these different parenting types. And then they would put all of the kids through a challenge to see how they would deal with it. And the one where it got really, they had to like stop filming for a minute because one of the dads fell apart, was that they did a stranger danger test. And all of these parents had in some way talked to their kids about stranger danger, but they set up a circumstance where the parents were in the house, but in the back of the house, somebody comes to the door and says, can I come in? Can you come to my car? There's puppies in the car. I need help. What should I do? And almost all of the kids, and these were all neurotypical kids, almost all of them failed it. Almost all of them. And I remember sitting there and thinking, oh, but you got to rehearse it. And one of the things that I love about ABA is that we get to rehearse and rehearse and rehearse and rehearse, and it gets in your body so that, eventually you can do it for your own. And you guys did this with my son. And let me tell you, I had a fair amount of anxiety while you were doing it because I knew the day was going to come where we're going to put it to test. Now, you did the test in a way that he was so safe. You had undercover people in a Walmart store. There were like 5 people in the store. They had plotted out this thing so they were all standing in these different places. I was at home because everybody knew I couldn't do it. My husband was there, and there was a set time when my husband was told to walk away. They had cameras on him. A stranger came up to him, and he had rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed, and he passed the test with flying colors. I just want to say that sometimes, if we can find gratitude in that we have, if your child has a diagnosis, you likely have funding to get help and support with these kinds of things. Now, the thing that I run into with myself and with a lot of parents is that we have these competing values. One is we want our child to be independent, and we want that fiercely, and we will fight you because we want our child to learn skills to be independent. But on the other side of that is that we want our child to be safe. We want our child to be safe, and we don't want you to do anything where, and sometimes those two values go boom, 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 boom. But with rehearsal, you guys got me to the point where I could allow him to learn and practice and show me that he understood the concept and could do it. It's so funny to me now, Dr. Grant-Pichet, because I can remember him being 4 years old and just sobbing because I thought, I'm never going to know that he's going to be safe crossing a road. I'm never going to know that. And just sobbing. And he's 21 and he crosses the road all the time and I don't even think about it, which is a lot. That's huge.
No, of course. I totally understand that. And I think if you think about it, Shannon, like, you know, as a parent of a child on the spectrum, you have so much more trauma around the independence stuff, right? It's like it's a legitimate concern to be overprotective is what I'm trying to say. And so parents are good parents are taught by reality that they have to be more protective. So now trying to get that parent to let go and allow the child the freedom to learn these things is a difficult journey. There's no question. But you are right. Everything that we do, and especially when it comes to things like safety, which are, you know, by nature, you can learn safety in a clinic, but it's never going to generalize unless it's actually on the street, right? So with a car or with strangers or so on. So safety is one of those things where the generalization of the skill matters a lot, right? So all the rules that pertain to staying away from strangers and all that sort of stuff, those are very, very important. Those types of things we really do get to rehearse, and that is a privilege because, as we all know, as you said, with neurotypical kids, you know, we can only hope that there's some lesson in their day-to-day lives that keeps them safe. Because too often, it just doesn't occur to parents that they need to teach these things and rehearse them, because it is possible to trick young children.
Yeah. Autism Journey with Elijah says, I would have had a heart attack. My son is too loving and looks at the best of everyone. He isn't scared of anything, and we are working on that. We find the animal therapy, it's the worst. He falls for that one every time. And believe me, you know, it's one of the reasons why that is the test, because they find that that is what kids fall for when somebody says, I need help. You know, I can remember being very little. I was 3 years old. It's probably one of my earliest memories, living in Boston, in the outskirts of Boston. And my mother, you know, back in those days, your mother kicked you out of the door and said, come back when the street lights come on, right? But I was, right? But I was 3, so she wasn't just letting me go. There was a big picture window upstairs of our house, and so she would kind of keep an eye on us in the unfenced yard. And I remember that this little orange VW car pulled up, and the person rolled down the window, and they were asking for directions. And I was 3 years old, and I am still the same person I was when I was 3, so I crossed the street to try to give them directions, because I was going to be helpful. I was 3. Yep. And my mother started screaming and banging on the window and screaming at me to get away from the car. Now, we had arguments about this, you know, until I was about 16 years old. And then I was old enough, and my mother said to me, I want you to stop and consider who asks a 3-year-old for directions, right? No, because before that, I was like, they just wanted directions, and I was just going to help them. When I was 16, I could go, oh, yeah, no, I don't think that they were up to anything good. But you know, I do think that for me and for my child, you know, it was a thing where we need to learn it, and we needed to practice it, both of us. And because of who I was as a child, I didn't know if he would ever get it. I did not know if he would ever get it. And that is so, I feel so bad for the parents who are stuck in that moment, because I am free of that. And to be free of that is a huge thing. To know that to trust that your child can be out in the world and be okay is a huge freedom. And I know that not everybody gets that. Not every kiddo gets there. But if we don't rehearse it and rehearse it and rehearse it and rehearse it, we do them a great disservice.
No, you're absolutely right, Shannon. It's funny though, you were giving these examples and I was thinking, it's funny you say that, because first of all, I had also a situation. I went to school in England when I was very, very young, and I was waiting for my father to come pick me up inside the school, and a stranger came and said, "Hey, come with me. I want to show you something." And I just felt like there's something very weird about this and kind of ran away. And then my parents arrived. But I was thinking also, as you were saying this, it's not just children. If you think about it, not to compare or to even bring this subject up, but like when you look at these documentaries about like serial killers, a lot of times they are fooling grown women by saying, "Hey, I need help with something."
Yep.
Right. So it is a privilege, I guess, to say that we get the opportunity to rehearse and teach and so on our kids. But I completely understand. I've been through so many traumatic experiences with parents where a child has run off from school, even because the aide was taking a break or something. And I can understand how scary it is. I mean, it is, typical children, your typical children, when they are I remember when my youngest was like outside the car, in the back of the car, and I couldn't see her and I panicked, right?
Yeah.
For one instant. I can't even imagine what it's like when you know that your child is unsafe and maybe even unable to communicate. So that makes it so much harder.
But the answer to all of these things, I think there's a lot of stuff that we get overwhelmed by. And sometimes, I'll speak for myself, sometimes that causes paralysis where I go, I don't know what to do and it scares me, so I'm not going to do anything. But I think that action is the key to all of this. And it helps so much when you're working with other people who already know how to do it. Now, we have a lot of videos here to help people to know how to do all kinds of things, but there is nothing better than working with a team of people who can help you to get through it. So for everybody watching, you mentioned caregiver collaboration before, and parent education and parent training. There are all kinds of ways that this is available now. I'm seeing this disheartening thing, Dr. Grant-Pichet, where I'm hearing from a lot of families that are not, they're not card families, let me say that are with other providers, that they're telling me that either they're not getting any of that, or that they found out after the fact that their team had a goal for them and didn't tell them what the goal was for the parent. And I just don't even know how that's a good teaching tool. But if you're working with any team, ask them about these kinds of things. Ask them to teach you how to do them, so that's the most empowering thing I know.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you, Shannon. And I think it's a variety of different issues. There are scenarios where parents are just overwhelmed with their own lives, and work and maybe other children and whatever. And so they just feel like they don't have time to learn all these things. There's another scenario, which is the individual who is supposed to be teaching the parents feels ill-equipped, or feels like they are, who am I to be teaching a parent when I'm not a parent myself yet? Those types of things. There's lots of different reasons this doesn't happen, but I completely agree. There's no question that having these skills, the ability to, break things down, look at functions of behavior, manage the antecedents and consequences, like just the basics of how to change behavior. Oh, it's so empowering. It's so empowering with your child.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that Autism Journey with Elijah said between that and elopement, the biggest frightening thing I face each day. And I just really, I'm sending you a hug, because I remember being in that phase. I love being the ghost of Christmas future and telling folks that it does not have to be that way forever. That when you take the kind of action that Dr. Grant-Pichet is talking about, and you learn these things and you rehearse them again and again and again with your child, it's like creating the Grand Canyon. It's slow. Let's not be mistaken. It's really slow, but it's worth it. I just came back from 10 days in Scotland with my son, who is a very capable world traveler now. And to watch him navigate and negotiate, being in a country you've never been in before, the money is different. The language was the same, sort of. Sort of.
I was going to say, it's pretty hard to understand Scottish English.
Yeah. Well, and we use different words. I got off the plane and asked somebody where the restroom was, and they thought I was going to faint. They were like, restroom? What is that? And then, Jem came over and said to me, you have to ask for the toilet. And I was like, toilet? We're really going to go there? We have to ask for a toilet? But that's what they want you to ask for. You say restroom, and everybody looks at you like you...
Or WC.
I guess, yes. There was one place that we went to that they talked about the WC, or the WC, which was fun. But anyway, my point is, when I was with him when he was 4, did I even dream that that was a possibility? I did not.
Right.
I did not. And, but we got there one day at a time, and by rehearsing, and I had to allow the team to work on things and say, this causes me anxiety, and let them help me through that instead of canceling and running away. And I see that some parents, look, let's be honest. I think everybody wants to run away, but sometimes you got to face it. For the good of your child.
Absolutely. And on the clinical side, I feel like it's really important for the BCBA, who is providing this kind of education, to listen.
Yeah.
And to make sure that they are actually listening to all the parents' concerns and addressing all of the parents' concerns, and not just trying to impose a kind of set of guidelines that are meaningless to the family.
Yeah. I got very lucky in that respect, because I had the amazing Sabrina Tuma, who listened to me until her face had to have fallen off, and she didn't poo-poo me. She listened to what I had to say, but she also did me the favor of not allowing me to be stuck in my own poo.
She still continues to be amazing.
Yeah, she's a pretty amazing, and she will not appear on the show. Believe me, I have begged, I have threatened, I have cajoled, I've bribed, I've done everything I can to get her to be on the show. I've even tried to guilt her into it. I said to her, well, that's fine if you don't want to be on the show, and then all of your skills will die with you. And she still won't come on.
Well, fortunately, Shannon, she's a clinical director at CARD, and so she does provide training and oversight for lots and lots of people.
Yes, that's why my guilt maneuver didn't work. It's tragic that I have to resort to these terrible, terrible things. We still have time for one more question if somebody wants to write in, but I want to take just a pause to tell you about our guests for the next week. Tomorrow, Sylvia Moore Myers is going to be with us, and she's going to be talking with us, giving a firsthand account of what it is like to be a vulnerable child who is not diagnosed, who doesn't get the diagnosis until much later. And I think it's a very compelling account for why early diagnosis is so key and important. We know it's best in terms of intervention, but to hear from somebody who the diagnosis was completely missed, it's a very interesting story. Also, on Monday, we're having Michael Gilberg, who's going to be joining us. He is a special education attorney who is also a self-advocate. So we're going to be hearing from a different perspective about how important it is to advocate in the schools. And then we'll be back with you on Tuesday. And then next Wednesday, we had to reschedule this from last month, but the amazing Andy Bondi is going to be with us. We have been cursed every time we've been, there have been so many times we've been about to have Andy Bondi on the show, and something always happens. So I'm crossing my fingers that it all goes well, and that we will actually, Andy Bondi, he and his wife were the co-creators of the PEX system, the Picture Exchange Communication System, and he's one of the nicest people. I've met him several times. He's one of the nicest people on the face of the planet, so we look forward to having him here with us, and he's going to be talking about PEX and how important it is to have a form of communication for absolutely everyone.
What a great thing that they developed. I remember talking to Andy, honestly, it must have been like in the early 90s, I want to say, like very early 90s when he came out with PEX, and just thinking, wow, this is really going to help so many people. So I'm so glad that it has, and it has been such a successful form of system of communication. Shannon, if we have a minute, we should mention the Halloween gala, the All Ghouls gala that's coming up on October 26th. And I am really excited and also really scared because we have not yet started to really get ready for it.
Well, that's not true. We've started getting ready for it. We just have a long way to go. But yes, as you guys know, Dr. Grant Pichet also founded Autism Care Today, which is an amazing charity that gives grants to people around the country for the things that they need. That might mean copay funds. It might mean money for an iPad. It might mean money towards an assistance dog or a computer or a camp, all different kinds of things.
Safety equipment like fencing or so on.
Absolutely, life-changing safety equipment. So, but those grants don't happen unless we raise money. So one of the big fundraisers, and it's a really raucous good time, I must say, the All Ghouls Gala this year will be the 3rd annual All Ghouls Gala. It happens that Saturday before Halloween. If you were going to come to LA at any point, this is the party to come to. The tickets are going on sale actually later on this week, and they will go fast. It will sell out. It is a very reasonable cost to go to a crazy party where you will be fed. There is an open bar. There are celebrities there. It is, dancing and all kinds of other fun, but it's Halloween. It is a costume party. You must come in costume, but there are some pretty amazing costume awards that are given out throughout the party as well. Dr. Grant Pichet is there. I'm there. So many of the people that you see on the show that are based in LA are there. So it is a thing not to be missed. All Ghouls Gala. We're going to be talking about it a lot more in the coming days. So I also want to say hi to Rodney. Rodney was with us. Hi, Rodney. So glad that you're here. And I'm glad that you guys like the schedule. We got through all of the questions and we're out of time. But Dr. Grant Pichet, I really want to just take a second and thank you. Whenever I have 3 minutes away from you, it reminds me how grateful I need to be when I get 3 minutes with you.
Oh, I feel the same way, Shannon. I missed you a lot over the last month that we were separated. So let me tell you, I'm just as grateful to have you in my life. And it's a joy to be doing this show with you on our, what is it now? I don't even know, 14th year, 15th year, I'm not sure.
I think we're starting this week. I think we're officially at 14 years and starting into the 15th year, but my math is never good. It could be that we finished the 13th and this is the, I don't know. I'll try to do the math with a calculator and a mathematician because I will need both. I don't know why math is not my thing. Autism Journey with Elijah says, what a blast. Wish I could be there. Well, the roads do come here. So anyway, lots of breath, fresh air today. I'm so glad that you were here with us. Dr. Grant Pichet, thank you so much for being here. We'll be back with you next week. Thank you for all that you do because it matters so much. And for all of you at home, thanks for sticking around. And we're back and the schedule's back and we're we're back in rotation. So there we go. We'll be joining you tomorrow. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.
Bye, everyone.
Don't forget, you can watch Ask Dr. Doreen live every Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. Pacific time. We hope to see you there.